played his first 6 seasons before he was then released by head coach Chip Kelly, obviously coach at the time.
It definitely is a great story. And then, I mean, I guess you can say, you know, starting your career somewhere and obviously going to a division rival team and, you know, having the possibility of maybe going back. I mean, you know, you just kind of think about all that, but you started somewhere and maybe would want to finish it.
Could all come full circle, folks. Jackson also said his #1 priority was to play with a great quarterback, and he can play for another 4 to 6 years. Stephen A., should Jackson want to return to Philadelphia?
I think he should. I think he should because, you know, you got to remember, working in Philadelphia for the Philadelphia Inquirer for years, I covered Desean Jackson. I know him well. And I'm here to tell you, he never wanted to leave Philadelphia. He was forced out by Chip Kelly, unceremoniously, so I might add. As far as I was concerned, the Eagles organization, probably Chip Kelly himself, literally tried to sabotage this man's career because if you recall, when they let him go, there was a whole bunch of stuff being said about him before he was able to latch on to the Washington Redskins. So it came across as literally the Philadelphia Eagles trying to get in the way of this man continuing his career in the National Football League. Then I sat down for an exclusive one-on-one interview with him for Sports Center, and we talked about those things. That was a couple of years ago, and I did the interview in Miami. He never wanted to leave Philadelphia. He wanted to be there. That was his home. He loves those folks there, and he definitely has a lot of love for Jeffrey Lurie because Jeffrey Lurie is a first-class individual. But the fan base in Philadelphia, what they meant to him, how he connected with them, and what have you, all of those things are things that he still remembers. Now, before, if you think about it, we look at a guy like Jordan Matthews, and we say, okay, where's the other receiver? I mean, Aguilar's getting benched for crying out loud, and you know, there's nobody else worth mentioning, and we don't know what happened to Zach Ertz and Brent Selleck at the tight end spot. They just evaporated. We didn't know what happened to them this year. But we know this much. If Desean Jackson is in your lineup, you have a deep threat. If you have a deep threat, you can't suffocate the line the way that you do. You've got to drop back into that secondary. He's going to command attention. That's going to open things up for Jordan Matthews. That's going to open things up for Ertz and Zellick. It's definitely going to open things up for Carson Wentz, and it may very well open things up for your running game. You take all of those things into consideration, it would be an ideal landing spot because even though you can't poo-poo what you've seen from Kirk Cousins, you got a lot of people, probably Desean Jackson as well, who firmly believe he's very, very good at padding his numbers, but does he show up when it counts most? Already after a rookie year. We don't really say that about Carson Wentz. He seems to have the guts to pull it off. So we'll see.
Seemed to go pretty well in Washington, so that remains. I don't see why he'd necessarily want to leave. Desean Jackson seemed to fit there. They have a pretty good team. That said, going back to Philadelphia is a great idea for Desean Jackson should he not wind up back in Washington, back in D.C. Look, Philadelphia was a Chip Kelly issue. Chip Kelly's gone. What does Desean Jackson care at this point? And when you look at that quarterback, at Carson Wentz, let's see what he can do with a guy who can take the lid off of defense, right? He's missing dynamic offensive options. We don't know really who's better between Dak Prescott and Carson Wentz yet, do we? You know, Dak Prescott has walked the walk. He's had a great offensive line and weapons and everything. Carson Wentz hasn't done that because he really hasn't had the weapons. But they have a pretty good offensive line. They have a really good defense, potentially. I mean, they have things and a promising young quarterback in Wentz who just looks like the real deal, and we've seen flashes of it last year. You give him a guy who can get behind that defense, an outside threat, who knows? But I'm really curious to see it. And if, as you say, Stephen A., Desean Jackson never wanted to leave, well, then he's coming back to a Chip Kelly-less situation, really with a much better long-term team in terms of their long-term prospects to succeed. So I think really it's the opposite of a dilemma, a choice between two bad options. I think Desean Jackson here has a choice between two great options.
You also got to remember, Desean Jackson was needed more in Philadelphia. This kid Crowder came on strong for the Washington Redskins last year. Jordan Reed is an absolute stud when healthy. There's been a new sighting for Vernon Davis at the tight end spot. You got to take that and along with the fact that Pierre Garçon and both Desean Jackson are obviously free agents. And then you got that kid out of TCU, Doxson, that they had drafted. So all those things considered, he's needed more in Philadelphia. And I think Desean Jackson is at that point in his career where he wants to be needed.
Sure.
He wants to feel
and you draft
needed
a
and wanted,
dynamic
and that
running
resonates
back.
as well.
You signed Desean Jackson in Philly, draft a dynamic running back, or somehow acquire one. You're off to the races.
And he says he wants to play with a great quarterback, so clearly he thinks Carson Wentz is if he wants to go to Philly. That's what we're gathering
And
from
Kirk
that.
Cousins could play. We're not acting like Kirk Cousins can't play, but he's more needed in Philly than he is in D.C.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. When we come back, Magic Johnson has taken charge of the Lakers, and we all expect him to make some changes. Could he ignore the noise?
For the most part, I'm just trying to stay, as level-headed, trying not to think about it, overthink it too much, because, at the end of the day, I'm still under contract. It's not my decision if I get traded or if I don't. So, just try and take it all in stride. When you really start thinking about it, your head will start spinning.
Garoppolo also told Schefter, which I find very funny, that his parents are all over the trade rumors, all over the internet, making it difficult for him to completely ignore the noise. You never stop being mom, I guess. Should Jimmy G insist on a trade to get out of New England?
Almost any other time, I would say yes, because you can't pass up on tens of millions of dollars that would come along with it. And the Patriots can't afford to pay him that, right, and keep him on the bench. In this case, this is one of the rare cases, I would say, you wait on the money, which I can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth. But I believe that Tom Brady will fall off the cliff. I believe it will happen before the end of this upcoming season. But even if I'm wrong and he's in a steady decline for, let's say, 3 more years and breaks every record of longevity known to man, you want to develop under Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and play for the Patriots and maybe go to the Hall of Fame one day? Or do you, and by the way, get rich? Or do you want to make a cash grab, go to another team, and who knows what happens? And I think Jimmy Garoppolo is for real. Based on what I've seen so far, he looks really good. I don't know how much better you can look in a short audition. He won both games, and he looked good doing it. But apparently, maybe injury-prone. I mean, he gets hurt in 2 games. And there's always the potential for a career-ending injury, even in a practice. I mean, it's a full-contact sport. So normally, I would say you got to go get the money. In this case, try to be the next Aaron Rodgers, Stephen A.
But, Max, are we sure that that's even an option for him to take over as the Patriots quarterback? Are we even sure that Bill Belichick looks at him as a future?
That is assuming Bill Belichick looks at him that way. The difficulty in talking about moves Bill Belichick will make, because he's both the GM and the head coach and more successful at both than anyone maybe ever, is it's tough to question the logic and the wisdom of the moves. So, right, if Bill Belichick does move him, tough to say he should have been the quarterback of the future, although he spent a 2nd-round pick on him. If he gets a 1st-rounder back, he's already improved his lot. And the assumption that Jimmy G is going to want him to take the money like everyone else who's ever lived may force Belichick's hand there.
The question was, should Garoppolo wait or insist on a trade now? The answer is yes, because now is when the suckers are everywhere, looking at 94 career passes, looking at 2 games this year, and saying to themselves, excuse me, 43 or 63, 68% of his passes were completed for over 500 yards in 2 games. This dude's the truth. We want him. We're willing to give up whatever we can to get him. This is the height of his value. Now, could it be higher down the line? Maybe, if Tom Brady gets hurt or Tom Brady decides to retire. Last time we looked at Tom Brady, he was pretty damn healthy, winning his 5th career Super Bowl championship and passing for over 400 yards in the process, and telling not just the world, but his beautiful supermodel wife, sorry, honey, I know you want me to retire. Ain't happening. I'm having entirely too much fun. I expect and intend to do this for years to come. That is Jimmy Garoppolo should have had that ringing in his ear. Not only that, let's also keep in mind, when it's about the money, the Patriots ain't the place to go for it. Patriots aren't known for paying their guys. Tom Brady gets paid, but most others don't. A matter of fact, they get shipped off before their time is due to get paid, because that's not how Bill Belichick rolls. And even in the case of Tom Brady has religiously restructured his salary, cut his salary. Modifications have been taking place all over the place, because Tom Brady loves being a Patriot. He loves being there. They love having him there, and he's willing to sacrifice his dollars just to be happy in the place where he's at. All of those things work against Jimmy Garoppolo staying in New England. He should get the hell up out of there quick, fast, and in a hurry because he supposedly wants to be a football player and a quarterback in the National Football League, and that ain't going to happen anytime soon in New England.
You know, his value may be peak at the moment or in the near future in terms of what the Patriots can get for him on the trade market. I don't know that his value is peak for him in terms of the money he can get right now. Not sure about that. I don't think a team is going to...
What I'm saying is if you're not playing, Max, and let's say, for example, let's hypothetically speaking, let's just say, for example, that Jimmy Garoppolo is there for the next year or two, but doesn't play it down. Because Tom Brady plays all 16 games. And the only time you see Jimmy Garoppolo is in preseason. I would make the argument, how would his value elevate? And he hasn't been in a real game for a year or two because Tom Brady's still playing.
I'll make the argument that shrewd teams will look at that and say Belichick wanted to keep him. We saw what he did in those 2 games when he got action. We can see him in the preseason. And he's had 2 more years of development under the greatest coach and quarterback maybe who ever lived.
Better than that. You know, I got you here. This is how you're not telling the truth. Because you know as well as I do that businesses, no matter how much your value is valued and elevated, businesses find a way to devalue you at every turn when it comes to the money. So if you're sitting on the bench, you might be right in terms of how they respect him and how they're looking at him. I'm talking about what they will conceivably do to use as an excuse to minimize the monetary commitment they normally would have to give him. You can't pull off now what you'd be able to pull off 2 years from now if he doesn't play.
I disagree. The quarterback market is always going to be the same because this idea that there aren't enough quarterbacks to go around is not because there aren't enough good quarterbacks. There are tons of good quarterbacks. It's because they're compared to one another, and in any population, you can put them on a bell curve. Some will be over here really, really good. Most will be in the middle.
But
some
how
will
would
be
you
really, really
Jimmy?
bad compared to their peers. Therefore, there will always be jobs available, and people's imaginations will run away with them remembering what he did in those 2 games.
So, in other words, you're trying to tell me, I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
What you're trying to say, Max Kellerman, is that if Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm speaking hypothetically, we obviously know they would pay him now.
Sure.
Okay, we both concede that now. But what you're saying is, if Jimmy Garoppolo rode the bench for the next 2 years because Tom Brady is healthy and is playing every game, you're telling me that teams would look at that and ignore it based on the 2 games they saw from this year, 2 years from now, and still give him money?
That's why I can answer that, Stephen A. You're a GM. He's available in 2 years, 2 more years tutelage under Brady and Belichick. You give him money, yes or no? More or less than
I'm not giving him the
now.
money I would give him now.
You give
my
more
point.
money
I'm not
now?
giving him the money I would give him now.
Okay, we agree to disagree.
I'm not giving him the money I would give him now. Right.
All right, so some question marks surrounding him, and clearly his parents will continue to monitor all those trade rumors. But are there question marks regarding Luke Walton's future? Should he be worried? Now that Magic is running the show, we debate if a change needs to be made. Plus, Desean Jackson left the Eagles on bad terms when then head coach Chip Kelly cut him for, quote, football reasons. But now he says he's open to a return. Take a listen.
It's a great story. And then, I mean, I guess you can say, you know, starting your career somewhere, you know,